All right, today we are diving into something that honestly sounds like it's pulled straight from a sci-fi movie. We're talking about a potential universal code, a language that might actually be writing reality itself. It's a framework called PsiLambda, and believe me, it makes some absolutely mind-blowing claims. So let's get right into it and see what this is all about.
So let's just start with this really big idea. What if everything around you, everything, the atoms that make up your hand, the stars you see at night, life itself, what if all of it were just written in the same language? Kind of like a universal operating system for the entire cosmos, a single code running the show.
Well, that is exactly what the PsiLambda project is proposing. It's this incredibly ambitious idea that there's a single underlying logic, a fundamental code that describes how everything in the universe works and interacts. The goal here is to stop thinking about physics, chemistry, and biology as separate things with their own rules, and instead see them all as part of one unified system.
Okay, so if we're going to treat reality like a language, where do you even begin? Well, you start with the alphabet, right? The basic building blocks. The big question is, how on earth does a system like PsiLambda describe something as simple as a rock and something as complex as a thought using the same letters? The answer, it turns out, starts with this core idea they call an identity.
The easiest way to think about this identity is like a universal digital fingerprint. The framework claims that literally anything, and I mean anything, from a single tiny atom all the way up to a complex biological process can be given its own unique identity. This signature basically spells out what that thing is in this universal language.
So, what's in this digital fingerprint? It's surprisingly simple, really. It's built from just 4 core parts. You've got M for mass, which is basically how much stuff something is made of. Then there's Q, which is all about its electrical nature or charge. Delta is its fundamental scale. Think of it like its own personal ruler. And finally, V, which is its unique spectral fingerprint, like a signature vibration that only it has. It's the combination of these 4 little values that creates the unique identity for everything. Okay, so we have our alphabet, those 4 components, but an alphabet isn't much good without grammar, right? The rules for how the letters combine. So how do these identities actually talk to each other to create the complex world we see? Let's dive into that.
And this, for me, is where it starts to get really wild. The claim here is that one single set of rules governs all interactions. That's it. So whether you're talking about 2 atoms snapping together to form a chemical bond, or 2 different nutrients working together inside your body, the claim is that the underlying logic is exactly the same. It all just boils down to how their unique identities fit together.
All right, let's bring this down to earth with a real-world example that we can all understand. You've probably heard this before. Vitamin C helps your body absorb iron. It's a classic biological synergy, a well-known fact. So the question is, how does PsiLambda see this relationship?
So what the framework does is it takes the unique identity for vitamin C and the identity for iron, and it runs them through its rules of interaction, its grammar, and out pops a score. Now, a score that's close to 1 means you have a highly coherent or synergistic relationship. And what does it calculate? 0.73. That's a really strong positive score that basically predicts, with math, the exact teamwork we already know happens in our bodies.
And it's not a one-trick pony either. The system works both ways. It looks at vitamin D and calcium, which we know work together, and boom, it gives them a high coherence score of 0.62. But what's really cool is it also predicts conflict. For example, we know that taking too much zinc can mess with your body's ability to absorb copper. They compete. And guess what? PsiLambda calculates a low clashing score of 0.40, perfectly matching what we observe in biology.
So think about this for a second. If you have an alphabet and a grammar that seems to be pretty good at describing how reality works, what's the next logical step? Well, you try to build an AI that can actually speak and think in that language.
And that brings us to something called GPT-PsiLambda. Now, this isn't like the AI you might be used to hearing about. It's an AI model designed for a totally different job. It's not trying to learn patterns in human language from the internet. Nope. It's being built to process the language of the universe itself, using these PsiLambda identities and rules of interaction.
So, how does an AI like this even think? Well, it's a 3-step process, basically. First, it has what's called a universal converter. This thing's job is to take any kind of data you throw at it, physics constants, chemical formulas, whatever, and translate it into a PsiLambda identity. Then its logic core takes over and processes these identities using that universal grammar we talked about. And finally, and this part is absolutely crucial, it uses entropy calculations to constantly check its own work, to self-regulate, making sure its reasoning stays stable and doesn't go off the rails.
Okay, now we get to the part that is just truly mind-bending. What happens when you take this whole language of reality framework and you point it at the biggest things we can think of, the entire cosmos? The results they got from their validation tests are, well, you know what, let's just let the numbers speak for themselves.
Let's start small. At the atomic level, they used it to predict the exact wavelength of light given off by a hydrogen atom, something called the Balmer alpha line. The prediction error? A tiny 0.01%. Just 0.01% off. That is incredibly accurate.
Okay, so let's scale way, way up. How about a black hole's event horizon, the point of no return? The framework calculated its size, the Schwarzschild radius, with, get this, 0% prediction error, a perfect, dead-on match with what physics already tells us. And now for the grand finale. They pointed it at the cosmic microwave background, literally the echo of the Big Bang itself, the oldest light in the universe. The framework predicted its peak frequency with, again, 0% error compared to our best observations. Another perfect match. Just wow. This chart really puts it all into perspective. It shows the absolute maximum error they found when they tested the framework's predictions against what we can actually observe in reality. And you can see, it doesn't matter if they're looking at atoms, galaxies, or the entire cosmos. The deviation never even hit 1%. And that consistency, being that accurate across such unbelievably different scales, is probably the most powerful claim this whole project makes.
So what in the world do we make of all this? We've got a system that says it can describe biology and black holes using the same basic rules, and then it seems to back it up with these insanely accurate predictions. It's a lot to take in. So where does that leave us?
Well, the ultimate goal of PsiLambda isn't just to be another new theory in physics or a new model in chemistry. It's presenting itself as a potential meta-framework, a kind of universal translator, a unifying language that could finally connect all the different branches of science, letting them all speak the same fundamental language for the first time.
And the project's own description really frames that ambition perfectly. They call it a unified framework connecting matter, energy, information, and consciousness. I mean, that is just a massive, profound, and frankly almost unbelievable claim about the very nature of reality.
Which really just leaves us with one final, huge question to chew on. If, and it's a big if, but if this framework holds up, if it's really what it claims to be, have we stumbled upon the Rosetta Stone for the entire universe? A key to finally read the source code of reality itself? It's a staggering thought to end on. Thanks for tuning in.